For my 31st birthday, my mother-in-law gifted me divorce papers. From all of us, she announced at the restaurant. My husband recorded my reaction for their entertainment. I thanked her, signed them immediately, and walked out. She had no idea what I'd already done. 3 days before my birthday, I caught Margaret at our kitchen table with legal documents spread in front of her. When she saw me, she quickly gathered the papers and slipped them into a birthday envelope. "Just some family paperwork," she said with a strange smile. I assumed it was maybe property documents or insurance papers David needed to sign. The decorated envelope looked so festive and innocent. That morning, I'd come downstairs early to make coffee before my shift at Romano's restaurant. The house was quiet and I expected to find the kitchen empty. Instead, Margaret sat hunched over official-looking papers, reading glasses perched on her nose as she examined each page carefully. Her concentration was intense, almost predatory, as she made notes in the margins with a red pen. The sound of my footsteps on the hardwood floor made her look up sharply. For a split second, her face showed something I'd never seen before. Not just disapproval or disappointment, but actual satisfaction. She moved with surprising speed for a woman in her 60s, gathering the documents into a neat pile and sliding them into what appeared to be a regular birthday card envelope. "Good morning, dear," she said, her voice artificially sweet in a way that immediately put me on edge. Margaret had never called me dear before. Usually she avoided using my name altogether, referring to me as David's wife, or simply she when talking to others. The sudden endearment felt wrong, like she was testing how it sounded before discarding it forever. The envelope itself was beautiful, pale pink with silver lettering that spelled, "Happy Birthday," in elegant script. Little butterflies danced around the edges and the whole thing looked expensive and thoughtful. Margaret held it carefully, running her fingers along the edges as if she was admiring her own selection. "I picked this one specifically for you," she said, watching my reaction closely. "Before we dive deeper into this incredible story of turning betrayal into triumph, please hit subscribe if you believe that honest work deserves respect, not shame. Your support helps us share more stories of women who refuse to stay down. Now, let's see how Margaret's cruelty backfired completely. I poured my coffee and tried to make casual conversation, asking if she needed help with whatever paperwork she was handling. Margaret's laugh was light and airy, completely different from her usual measured responses. "Oh, this is something special I've been working on for quite some time. David doesn't even know about it yet." The secrecy intrigued me. In 2 years of marriage, Margaret had never planned surprises or shown interest in gift-giving beyond obligatory holidays. She was practical and direct, not the type to spend time on elaborate presentations or sentimental gestures. The fact that she was putting effort into my birthday felt like progress in our difficult relationship. "It's something that will change everything," she continued, placing the envelope carefully in her purse. "I've been consulting with professionals to make sure everything is handled properly. You deserve something meaningful after all this time." Her words filled me with unexpected hope. Maybe Margaret had finally recognized my efforts to fit into their family. Perhaps she'd noticed how hard I'd been trying to find more respectable employment, or maybe she'd seen how much I loved David despite their constant criticism. The idea that she might be planning something special for my 31st birthday made me feel lighter than I had in months. David appeared in the kitchen moments later, already dressed for work. He kissed my cheek and grabbed his travel mug, but I noticed him exchange a meaningful look with his mother. They shared some kind of silent communication that excluded me entirely. When I asked if everything was all right, David just smiled and said they were planning something special for my birthday. The rest of that week, Margaret's behavior became increasingly strange and pleasant. She called me twice to ask about my schedule, making sure I'd be available for dinner on my birthday. She even suggested we celebrate at Romano's restaurant, which shocked me completely. Margaret had never shown interest in visiting my workplace, always making excuses when David suggested we eat there as a family. "I think it would be meaningful to celebrate where you work," she explained during one phone call. "It's important that we acknowledge all aspects of your life." The words sounded caring, but something in her tone made me uncomfortable. Margaret didn't speak in sentimental language or express interest in acknowledging my life. Her sudden change felt calculated rather than genuine. Emma, David's sister, started acting differently too. She'd smile mysteriously when Margaret mentioned my birthday plans, and she volunteered to help with arrangements without being asked. Emma usually avoided family events that involved me, claiming work or social conflicts. Her enthusiasm about my birthday dinner felt suspicious, but I pushed down my doubts and chose to focus on their apparent acceptance. David's excitement about the birthday celebration grew throughout the week. He'd check his phone constantly, responding to texts with satisfied grins. When I tried to peek at his messages, he'd angle the screen away from me playfully, saying it was surprise business that I wasn't allowed to see. His secretive behavior felt loving rather than threatening. The night before my birthday, Margaret called to confirm the dinner arrangements one final time. "Wear something nice," she advised, "but nothing too formal. You'll want to be comfortable for what we have planned." Her tone carried an edge of anticipation that I mistook for excitement about finally celebrating me properly. I spent extra time choosing my outfit, settling on a navy dress that looked professional but approachable. The mirror reflected someone who was trying hard to be worthy of acceptance, smoothing every wrinkle and checking every detail. I wanted to look perfect for what I hoped would be our breakthrough moment as a family. That evening, as I prepared for bed, David seemed unusually affectionate. He held me close and told me how much he loved me, speaking with an intensity that felt almost like goodbye. "Tomorrow will be a day you'll never forget," he whispered into my hair. I fell asleep feeling cherished and hopeful, completely unaware that his tenderness was actually guilt over what was coming. The decorated envelope sat in Margaret's purse, waiting to deliver its devastating contents. While I dreamed about finally earning their respect, she was probably rehearsing her speech about family standards and difficult decisions. The woman who had smiled so strangely while handling those legal documents was counting down the hours until she could destroy me publicly. I woke up on my 31st birthday believing it would mark my acceptance into David's family. Instead, it would become the day Margaret handed me the greatest gift of my life: freedom from their toxic judgment and the chance to discover who I could become without their limitations holding me back. The first family gathering after our honeymoon was David's cousin Michael's graduation party. I spent 2 hours getting ready, choosing a conservative black dress and minimal jewelry, hoping to blend in quietly with the family. Margaret greeted me at the door with air kisses that never touched my cheeks, then immediately steered me toward a group of relatives I'd never met. "This is David's wife," she announced to the circle of well-dressed women. "She works in the service industry." The pause before those words was deliberate, giving everyone time to process what that meant. Aunt Patricia raised her eyebrows knowingly, while Cousin Janet made a sympathetic sound that felt more like pity than welcome. "How interesting," Janet said, her smile tight and condescending. "What kind of service work do you do?" Margaret jumped in before I could answer, explaining that I was still figuring out my career path, while working temporarily in food service. She made it sound like I was lost and directionless rather than employed and hardworking. The conversation continued around me as if I wasn't there. They discussed Michael's internship at a law firm, another cousin's promotion at a marketing company, and Emma's recent engagement to a doctor. When someone asked about my background, Margaret smoothly redirected the topic to David's accounting practice and how proud they were of his professional growth. I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing a moment to breathe away from their suffocating disapproval. In the hallway, I overheard Margaret telling someone, "We're hoping she'll find something more suitable soon. David deserves a wife who can contribute to their social position properly." The words stung because they reduced my entire identity to my perceived failure to meet their standards. Thanksgiving dinner 3 months later followed the same pattern but with increased intensity. Margaret had invited extended family, including relatives I'd only met once at the wedding. As we went around the table sharing what we were thankful for, she made sure to highlight everyone's professional achievements while strategically skipping over me entirely. "I'm thankful for Emma's engagement to Dr. Patterson," Margaret said, beaming at her daughter. "And for David's growing client base at his accounting firm. It's wonderful to see young people establishing themselves professionally." When my turn came, I mentioned being grateful for family and good health, avoiding any reference to work that might trigger another lecture. Margaret's sister Patricia pulled me aside after dinner, ostensibly to help with dishes but actually to deliver unsolicited advice. "You know, dear, Margaret just wants what's best for David. Have you considered going back to school? There are so many opportunities for women willing to improve themselves." Her words carried the weight of family consensus. They'd all discussed my inadequacies and agreed on solutions. The holidays became exercises in endurance rather than celebration. At Christmas, Margaret gave Emma a beautiful silk scarf and presented me with a book titled Professional Success for Women, wrapped in newspaper instead of proper gift paper. The message was clear. Everyone else received gifts while I received homework assignments for becoming acceptable. David's birthday party in February revealed how deeply the family dynamics had shifted. Margaret planned an elaborate celebration at an upscale restaurant, inviting his professional colleagues and successful friends. I wore my best dress and tried to participate in conversations about business trends and investment strategies, but my contributions were met with polite smiles that quickly faded. When someone asked about my work, David actually stepped in before I could answer. "She's exploring different opportunities right now," he said, avoiding eye contact with me. His shame about my job had grown so obvious that he couldn't even let me speak for myself anymore. The man who once bragged about my work ethic to his friends now treated my employment like a family secret. Emma's engagement party in March brought new levels of social torture. She'd invited her college sorority sisters, all successful professional women who asked polite questions about my career. Margaret hovered nearby during these conversations, ready to redirect attention whenever I mentioned Romano's restaurant. She'd interrupt with comments about the wedding planning or ask someone else about their job, making my occupation invisible in social settings. The worst incident happened during Easter dinner when Margaret's friend Carol joined us. Carol was a retired executive who spent the meal discussing her daughter's law career and her son's medical practice. When she asked about my background, Margaret actually interrupted my response to explain that I was between opportunities and considering various options for professional growth. I excused myself to the powder room and cried quietly into tissues, feeling completely erased from my own life story. Margaret was rewriting my identity to fit her narrative, turning steady employment into temporary confusion and honest work into something shameful that needed explanation or apology. The pattern of family gatherings became predictable and painful. Margaret would position me near people who would naturally ask about my work, then swoop in to manage the conversation when my answers didn't meet her standards. She'd suggest I was actively job hunting or pursuing education, creating fictional versions of my life that sounded more acceptable to their social circle. David's transformation during these events was the most heartbreaking aspect of our deteriorating situation. The man who'd fallen in love with my independence and strong work ethic now looked embarrassed when I mentioned my job. He'd change the subject quickly or make jokes about upgrading my career as if my current employment was temporary embarrassment rather than legitimate work. The family group chat became another source of daily humiliation. Emma would share articles about successful women, always accompanied by comments about inspiration and goals. When I'd respond positively, she'd follow up with questions about my own professional development that felt more like interrogation than conversation. Margaret's friends at the country club provided another avenue for public embarrassment. She'd mention my employment status to them with theatrical sighs, describing my job as David's burden that the family was helping him handle. When these women encountered me at social events, their pitying expressions and overly encouraging comments about finding my path made clear that Margaret had portrayed me as a project rather than a person. The constant criticism began affecting how I saw myself in mirrors and photographs. Margaret's comments about my appearance made me second-guess every outfit choice and makeup decision. I started shopping for clothes I couldn't afford, trying to look like the professional women she obviously preferred. My credit card balance grew while my self-confidence shrank. By the spring of our second year of marriage, I'd become a completely different person than the confident woman David had married. Margaret's systematic campaign of disapproval had succeeded in making me question my worth, my choices, and my place in David's life. Every family interaction reinforced their message that I was temporary embarrassment rather than permanent family member. The breaking point arrived during a phone conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. Margaret was talking to her friend Helen about David's marriage, and her words cut through me with surgical precision. "I keep praying he'll come to his senses before it's too late. He's such a good boy and he deserves someone who can enhance his life rather than hold him back." Standing in my own hallway, listening to my mother-in-law pray for my marriage's destruction, I finally understood that acceptance was never going to be possible. Margaret didn't just disapprove of my job. She disapproved of my existence in David's life. The battle I'd been fighting was rigged from the beginning, designed to wear me down until I either transformed completely or disappeared entirely. The morning after hearing Margaret's devastating phone conversation, I sat at my laptop with renewed determination. If she was praying for David to leave me, I'd prove her wrong by becoming the professional woman she claimed he deserved. The job search websites glowed on my screen as I created profiles on every platform I could find: LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster, and smaller local employment sites. My resume looked pathetic spread across one page. 3 years at Romano's restaurant, a high school diploma, and scattered customer service experience from part-time jobs during school. I stared at the blank sections where college degrees and professional accomplishments should have been, feeling Margaret's voice echo in my head about real qualifications and proper preparation. I rewrote my job descriptions 5 times, trying to make serving tables sound like executive experience. Managed multiple client relationships simultaneously while maintaining high satisfaction ratings. Coordinated complex service delivery under time-sensitive conditions. The words felt fake and inflated, but online articles promised that strategic language could bridge experience gaps. Cover letters became my obsession. I'd wake up early to write personalized messages for administrative assistant positions, customer service roles, and entry-level office jobs across 3 counties. Each letter took an hour to craft, explaining how my restaurant background had prepared me for professional challenges. I highlighted my reliability, communication skills, and ability to work under pressure. The first rejection email arrived within hours of my application to a dental office receptionist position. "Thank you for your interest, but we're seeking candidates with medical office experience." The second rejection came from an insurance company. "We require applicants with college-level education for this role." By the end of the first week, my inbox overflowed with polite dismissals that all said the same thing: I wasn't qualified for anything beyond my current situation. David found me crying over my laptop one evening after a particularly brutal day of rejections. "Maybe you're aiming too high too fast," he suggested, rubbing my shoulders. "There's nothing wrong with starting smaller and working your way up." His words were meant to comfort, but they echoed his mother's constant message that I should lower my expectations rather than raise my qualifications. The interview at Henderson Insurance Company became my first real-world lesson in professional humiliation. The office building intimidated me from the moment I walked through the glass doors. Women in sharp suits clicked across marble floors in expensive heels, carrying leather briefcases and speaking confidently into wireless headsets. I felt underdressed despite wearing my best outfit. Mrs. Henderson, the hiring manager, looked at my resume for exactly 30 seconds before setting it aside. "Your background is quite limited for this position," she said, not bothering to hide her disappointment. "We typically hire candidates with insurance experience or business degrees. What made you think you'd be qualified for account management?" My carefully prepared answers about transferable skills and eagerness to learn fell flat in that sterile conference room. Mrs. Henderson actually checked her watch while I spoke, making it clear that my time was being wasted along with hers. "Perhaps you should consider positions more aligned with your current skill set," she suggested, ending the interview 15 minutes early. The drive home from that disaster was the longest 20 minutes of my life. I sat in the parking lot afterward, replaying every awkward moment and cringing at my naive optimism. Margaret's voice played in my head like a broken record. "Some people just aren't meant for professional environments." Community college enrollment became my next desperate strategy. The evening business program promised to give me the credentials Margaret claimed I lacked. I registered for Introduction to Business, Basic Accounting, and Professional Communication, paying the fees with money I'd been saving for new furniture. My first night in class revealed how unprepared I was for academic challenges. The other students were mostly working professionals seeking advancement or career changes. They spoke confidently about their corporate experiences while I sat quietly, taking notes and hoping no one would ask about my background. Professor Martinez assigned a project about professional networking that required interviewing someone in our desired field. I had no connections in business, no professional contacts, and no idea how to approach strangers for informational interviews. While classmates discussed their mentors and industry contacts, I realized how isolated I was from the professional world. David's reaction to my college enrollment was lukewarm at best. "Are you sure this is worth the time and money?" he asked when I showed him my class schedule. "Maybe you should focus on finding work first and worry about education later." His practical concerns made sense financially, but his lack of enthusiasm for my efforts felt like another vote of no confidence. My performance at Romano's restaurant began declining as stress and exhaustion took their toll. Late nights studying left me tired during busy shifts, and constant rejection from job applications made me lose the cheerful energy that customers appreciated. I'd catch myself spacing out while taking orders, distracted by interview preparation or homework assignments. Mr. Romano noticed the change immediately. "You seem troubled lately," he said during a quiet afternoon shift. "Is everything all right at home?" His genuine concern made me want to confess everything, but how could I explain that my husband's family was systematically destroying my confidence? Instead, I blamed general stress and promised to do better. Maria, the head cook, became my unofficial therapist during work breaks. She'd noticed my red eyes after particularly difficult evenings of job hunting and would wordlessly hand me extra coffee or a plate of food I hadn't ordered. "Education is good," she said one day, "but don't let anyone make you ashamed of honest work." The financial pressure of my improvement campaign created new problems at home. Interview clothes, gas money for driving to different cities, textbooks, and tuition fees strained our already tight budget. David started questioning every purchase, asking if new professional outfits were really necessary when I wasn't getting hired anyway. "Maybe we should take a break from all this," he suggested after reviewing our credit card statements. "You're spending more money trying to get jobs than you'd earn in the first few months." His practical observation felt like abandonment when I desperately needed his support for this uphill battle. The community college library became my refuge from both family criticism and financial stress. I'd sit in quiet corners surrounded by business textbooks and career development guides, trying to absorb knowledge that might make me worthy of professional consideration. Other students would form study groups, but I remained isolated, too embarrassed about my background to seek academic partnerships. My grades were excellent, proving I had the intelligence Margaret claimed I lacked. Professor Martinez praised my written assignments and asked me to share my customer service insights with the class. For 3 hours each week I felt valued and capable, but those feelings evaporated the moment I returned home to face family disapproval. The spring semester brought advanced business communication and my first presentation assignment. Standing in front of the class, explaining customer relationship management principles I'd learned through restaurant work, I felt confident and knowledgeable. My classmates asked thoughtful questions and seemed genuinely interested in my practical experience. That confidence lasted until I shared my academic success with David over dinner. "That's great," he said absently, scrolling through his phone. "Maybe Margaret will be impressed when you finish the program." His response reduced my achievement to ammunition in the ongoing war for his mother's approval rather than recognizing my personal growth. The semester ended with strong grades and renewed hope, but job applications continued yielding the same rejections. Insufficient experience. Looking for candidates with degree completion. Position requires corporate background. Each email reinforced the message that education alone wouldn't bridge the gap between my current reality and their expectations. Margaret's reaction to my academic progress was predictably dismissive. "Community college is a good start," she said when David mentioned my grades. "Though real career advancement usually requires proper university education." Even my success became evidence of my continued inadequacy in her relentless campaign to prove I wasn't good enough for her son. Summer arrived with my determination intact despite Margaret's dismissive comments about community college. I created spreadsheets to track my job applications, color-coding them by status and follow-up dates. Green for submitted, yellow for pending responses, red for rejections. Within 3 weeks, my screen was overwhelmed with red cells, each one representing another door that had slammed shut. The rejection from Pinnacle Marketing came with particular sting. I'd driven 45 minutes for an interview with their human resources director, wearing a blazer I'd bought specifically for the occasion. The woman glanced at my resume, asked 2 questions about my restaurant experience, then spent the remaining 10 minutes explaining why they needed someone with traditional business background. "Your customer service skills are admirable," she said with practiced politeness, But this position requires strategic thinking and analytical capabilities that come from corporate experience. She might as well have told me that waitresses couldn't think properly. I thanked her for her time and walked back to my car feeling smaller than when I'd arrived. The folder of rejection letters grew thick enough to require a rubber band. Each form response was slightly different but carried the same message. Insufficient qualifications, lack of relevant experience, not the right fit for their organization. I started recognizing the phrases that meant no before reading entire emails. While your background is interesting, meant rejection. We've decided to pursue other candidates, meant failure. Some companies never responded at all, leaving me to check my email obsessively for weeks before accepting the silence as answer enough. Those non-responses felt worse than direct rejections because they suggested my application wasn't even worth acknowledging. I'd refresh my inbox dozens of times daily, hoping for any sign that someone valued my effort. Margaret's weekly phone calls became sessions of barely concealed gloating. "How's the job search going, dear?" she'd ask with false sweetness. When I admitted to another week without responses, she'd make sympathetic sounds that felt more like celebration. "These things take patience," she'd say. "Not everyone is cut out for certain types of work." The interview at Westfield Insurance was the most humiliating experience of my entire search. The receptionist made me wait in the lobby for 2 hours, claiming the hiring manager was running behind schedule. Other candidates came and went while I sat there, checking my phone and trying to look professional despite growing anxiety. When Mr. Westfield finally called me into his office, he seemed surprised to see me. "Oh right, the restaurant girl," he said, shuffling through papers on his desk. "Let's see what we have here." He asked me to complete a computer skills assessment that involved spreadsheet functions I'd never seen before. My confusion was obvious, and his impatience grew with each question I couldn't answer. "This position requires technical competency," he explained, not unkindly but firmly. "Perhaps you should consider roles that better match your current skill level." The suggestion that I should stay in my lane felt like Margaret speaking through a stranger's mouth. David started noticing my defeated returns from interviews. "How did it go today?" he'd ask when I came home with slumped shoulders and tired eyes. I began editing my stories, removing the most humiliating details to preserve what remained of his respect for me. When the hiring manager at Thompson Real Estate laughed at my salary expectations, I told David the interview went pretty well instead. The community college campus became my sanctuary during evening classes. Professor Martinez treated me with the respect that employers denied, praising my written assignments and encouraging my participation in discussions. My classmates were mostly working adults seeking advancement, and they didn't judge my restaurant background the way professional interviewers did. Business communication class taught me to analyze my failures objectively. My presentations earned high marks, and Professor Martinez often used my customer service examples to illustrate theoretical concepts. "Your practical experience provides valuable perspective," she'd tell the class, making me feel knowledgeable instead of inadequate for the first time in months. But academic success didn't translate to employment opportunities. The rejection from Coastal Bank arrived the same week I received an A on my midterm exam. "While your educational efforts are commendable, we require candidates with banking experience for this entry-level position." The irony was crushing. Even entry-level jobs demanded experience I couldn't get without being hired first. Romano's restaurant provided the only stability in my increasingly chaotic world. Mr. Romano noticed my distraction during busy shifts and pulled me aside during a quiet Tuesday afternoon. "You've been different lately," he observed, genuine concern in his weathered face. "Is everything okay at home?" I couldn't explain that my husband's family was systematically destroying my self-worth. Instead, I blamed general stress and assured him I was fine. Mr. Romano wasn't convinced, but he respected my privacy while quietly giving me easier sections and additional break time when I looked particularly exhausted. Maria, our head cook, became my unexpected source of emotional support. She'd worked at Romano's for 15 years, supporting 3 children as a single mother, and she recognized struggle when she saw it. During slow periods, she'd share stories about her own challenges with pursuing education while working full-time. "They try to make you think you're not good enough," Maria said one evening as we cleaned up after a busy dinner rush. "But look around here. You handle 6 tables during rush hour, remember every order, and keep customers happy even when they're difficult. That takes intelligence and skill they don't teach in fancy schools. Tony, the youngest member of our staff, offered encouragement with the enthusiasm of someone who hadn't faced systematic rejection yet. "You're the smartest person here," he'd tell me when I looked particularly defeated. "Those companies don't know what they're missing." His faith in me felt precious because it came without conditions or expectations. The financial strain of my job search began affecting every aspect of our marriage. Interview outfits, gas money for driving to distant cities, parking fees, and tuition payments consumed our savings account. David watched our balance shrink with growing concern, questioning whether this investment in my future was sustainable. "Maybe you should take a break from the applications," he suggested after reviewing our monthly expenses. "Focus on school for now and worry about career changes after you graduate." His suggestion made practical sense, but it felt like surrender to Margaret's timeline rather than determination to prove her wrong. Sleep became elusive as rejection anxiety invaded my nights. I'd lie awake replaying interview mistakes, wondering what I could have said differently, imagining how other candidates had impressed employers who found me lacking. The darkness amplified every insecurity Margaret had planted in my mind about my worthiness and potential. My appetite disappeared along with my confidence. Food became fuel rather than pleasure, and I lost weight without trying. Margaret noticed during our monthly family dinner, commenting that I looked drawn and tired lately, with false concern that felt more like satisfaction. Even my physical appearance became evidence of my failure to handle professional challenges properly. The stack of rejection letters grew so thick that I had to move them to a larger folder. Each response represented hours of preparation, hope, and eventual disappointment. Some employers had been kind in their rejections, others brutally honest about my inadequacy, but the result was always the same. I wasn't good enough for the professional world that David's family inhabited. By autumn, I'd applied to 47 different positions across 4 counties. The rejections had become routine, but they still stung with fresh intensity each time. Margaret's prediction about my limitations seemed to be proving accurate, and the professional world appeared determined to keep me exactly where I was, serving tables while dreaming of acceptance I'd never achieve. Monday afternoon found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by the remnants of another failed week. 47 rejections, Margaret's latest dismissive comment about community college, and David's growing impatience with our mounting expenses had left me questioning everything I'd been fighting for. The laundry basket sat beside me, filled with clothes that represented my shrinking world. Work uniforms, interview outfits that had brought no success, and casual wear for staying home between disappointments. My phone buzzed with an unknown number while I folded David's work shirts. Telemarketer calls had become so frequent that I usually ignored unfamiliar numbers, but something made me swipe to answer. Maybe I was hoping for a miracle, or maybe I was just tired of feeling disconnected from the world that kept rejecting me. "Hello, is this speaking with Jennifer?" The woman's voice was professional but warm, with none of the hurried efficiency I'd grown to expect from business calls. She spoke my name like it mattered, with careful pronunciation and genuine interest. "This is Jessica Martinez from Grand Plaza Hotel's Human Resources Department. I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." My heart stopped completely. Grand Plaza Hotel. I remembered submitting that application during a particularly desperate evening in February, 6 months ago, when winter rejection letters had piled up faster than snow. The application had been one of dozens I'd sent out that week, cast into the void of online job boards with little hope of response. "We received your application for our guest services coordinator position," Jessica continued, "and I was wondering if you're still interested in discussing opportunities with our team." Her words sounded impossible after months of silence from potential employers. Someone was actually calling me about a job, treating my application like it had value instead of filing it directly into rejection folders. I set down the shirt I'd been folding, my hands trembling slightly as I reached for a pen and paper. "Yes, absolutely," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm very interested in learning more about the position." Jessica's laugh was genuine and encouraging, nothing like the polite dismissals I'd grown accustomed to hearing from hiring managers. "Wonderful. I have to tell you, your restaurant experience really caught our attention. We've found that candidates with your background often excel in hospitality because you understand customer service from the ground up." Her words were revolutionary. Someone was praising my waitressing experience instead of apologizing for it or suggesting I overcome it. Jessica explained that Grand Plaza Hotel specialized in creating exceptional guest experiences, and they valued employees who understood service excellence through practical application rather than theoretical training. My years at Romano's restaurant weren't a liability to overcome. They were credentials that qualified me for advancement. We offer comprehensive training programs for career development, she continued, including management track opportunities for employees who demonstrate leadership potential. Our benefits package includes health insurance, dental coverage, retirement planning, and educational assistance for professional development courses. The benefits she described surpassed anything I'd imagined possible. At Romano's, health insurance was a luxury we couldn't afford, and retirement planning was something other people did. The idea of an employer investing in my education instead of questioning my qualifications felt foreign and wonderful. There's one more aspect of this position that might interest you, Jessica said, her voice taking on an excited tone. The role includes housing in our employee residential building. It's a fully furnished apartment with utilities included, just a 5-minute walk from the hotel. Many of our team members find it convenient, especially those relocating for the opportunity. I had to sit down. Free housing meant independence from David's family's constant criticism and financial pressure. 3 hours away from Margaret's disapproving presence felt like an impossible dream that someone was offering as reality. The distance would mean starting fresh where nobody knew about my year of failures and rejections. The salary range is $42,000 to $48,000 annually, depending on experience and performance during training, Jessica added. My current income from Romano's barely reached $30,000. And that was with good tip nights and extra shifts. The financial independence this job offered would transform my entire life situation. I realize this might be a big decision since you'd be relocating, Jessica said, but we're impressed with your background and think you'd be an excellent fit for our team culture. Would you be interested in scheduling a phone interview later this week to discuss details? My mind raced through possibilities I hadn't dared consider before. Professional respect, financial security, physical distance from Margaret's toxicity, and a chance to prove my worth in an environment that valued my existing skills. Everything I'd been desperately seeking was being offered by someone who saw potential instead of limitations. I would love to schedule an interview, I said, my voice stronger than it had been in months. This opportunity sounds incredible, and I'm very interested in learning more about your team and the position requirements. Jessica's enthusiasm was infectious, making me feel valued and wanted after so many months of rejection and dismissal. We scheduled the phone interview for Thursday afternoon, giving me 3 days to research the hotel and prepare thoughtful questions. After hanging up, I sat in my quiet kitchen feeling emotions I'd almost forgotten existed. Hope bubbled up from somewhere deep inside, replacing the constant anxiety that had become my normal state. The irony wasn't lost on me. Margaret's birthday envelope sat somewhere in this house, filled with legal documents designed to destroy my place in this family. Meanwhile, I now possessed information that would prove every negative thing she'd ever said about my potential was completely wrong. The timing felt like cosmic justice. I wanted to call David immediately and share the incredible news, but something held me back. This opportunity was mine alone, discovered through my own efforts despite his family's constant discouragement. For the first time in our marriage, I had something valuable that didn't require their approval or validation. The job offer represented more than employment. It was vindication of everything I'd believed about my own worth. Jessica Martinez had seen qualities in my application that dozens of other employers had missed or dismissed. Someone finally recognized that my restaurant experience demonstrated valuable skills rather than professional inadequacy. I decided to keep the news secret until my birthday celebration. Margaret had spent 2 years trying to prove I wasn't good enough for David or their family standards. Now I could reveal that not only was I good enough, but I was moving beyond their limited vision of my potential. The decorated envelope she'd prepared would pale in comparison to the real gift I'd be sharing, evidence that their judgment had been wrong all along. That evening, I moved through my routine at Romano's with renewed energy. My regular customers noticed the change immediately, commenting on my bright smile and efficient service. Mrs. Patterson, who came in every Monday for the early bird special, said I looked happier than she'd seen me in months. The secret knowledge of my opportunity felt powerful and precious. While Margaret prepared whatever surprise she thought would devastate me, I was holding information that would transform our entire dynamic. For once, I would be the one with shocking news to share, and they would be the ones struggling to process an unexpected revelation. 3 days stretched ahead before my birthday celebration, 3 days to savor the knowledge that everything was about to change. Margaret's envelope might contain family paperwork as she'd claimed, but my future now held possibilities she couldn't imagine or control. Tuesday morning brought my phone interview with Jessica Martinez, and I locked myself in our bedroom while David was at work. The conversation exceeded every hope I'd harbored about this opportunity. Jessica's questions focused on scenarios I could answer confidently, handling difficult customers, managing multiple priorities during busy periods, and maintaining service excellence under pressure. "Your references from Romano's restaurant are glowing," she said, rustling papers on her end of the call. "Mr. Romano spoke very highly of your reliability and customer relationship skills. That's exactly the foundation we build on here at Grand Plaza Hotel." Hearing that my current employer had praised me to a potential new one felt like vindication after months of being told my experience was inadequate. The formal job offer arrived via email that afternoon while I was preparing for my evening shift. The PDF document was official and beautiful, with the hotel's elegant letterhead and detailed terms that made this opportunity feel real and achievable. Guest Services Coordinator, starting salary $45,000 annually, comprehensive benefits and employee housing included. I printed 3 copies, folding one carefully to carry in my purse like a talisman. That evening at Romano's, I moved through my shift with energy I hadn't felt in months. Every customer interaction reminded me that I was good at this work, that my skills had value in professional environments. When Mrs. Chun complimented my service and left a generous tip, I thought about how those same abilities would translate to luxury hotel hospitality. "You seem different tonight," Maria observed during our break. "More like yourself again." She was right. The weight of constant inadequacy had lifted from my shoulders. For the first time since Margaret's campaign against me began, I felt worthy of the space I occupied in the world. David's call Wednesday morning changed the entire trajectory of my secret planning. "Mom wants to take you out for your birthday tomorrow," he said, excitement obvious in his voice. "She suggested Romano's since you're always talking about how much you love working there." His interpretation of Margaret's choice made perfect sense to me. Finally, she was acknowledging my workplace instead of dismissing it. "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely touched by what seemed like progress in our relationship. "I can't believe she wants to celebrate at Romano's. Does this mean she's finally accepting my job?" David's pause lasted just long enough to plant seeds of hope that would make tomorrow's revelation even more meaningful. "I think she's beginning to understand what makes you happy," he said carefully. "She wants this birthday to be special." His words felt like confirmation that the family dynamics were shifting in my favor. Combined with my secret job offer, everything seemed to be aligning for a perfect celebration of new beginnings. Emma's text message that afternoon added to my growing excitement. "Can't wait for tomorrow night. This birthday will definitely be memorable." Her enthusiasm seemed genuine for the first time since our relationship had soured. Maybe David had talked to his family about treating me better, or perhaps they'd finally recognized my efforts to meet their expectations. I spent Wednesday evening planning exactly how I'd reveal my news. The job offer letter sat in my jewelry box, waiting for the perfect moment to transform their perception of me. I practiced different approaches in the bathroom mirror, trying to find the balance between humility and confidence that would make my announcement most effective. "I have some exciting news to share," I rehearsed, watching my reflection. 3 days ago, I received a job offer from Grand Plaza Hotel. The words felt powerful and transformative, promising to rewrite the narrative Margaret had created about my professional inadequacy. I imagined her shocked expression, David's proud smile, and Emma's grudging respect. Thursday morning shopping became an adventure in self-expression I hadn't allowed myself in months. I chose a navy dress with subtle elegance that would photograph well if David decided to capture the moment. The fabric felt expensive against my skin, and the cut was flattering without being flashy. I wanted to look like the professional woman I was about to become. My hair appointment at Sandra's salon was a luxury I justified as investment in my future image. Sandra had been cutting my hair for years, and she noticed my improved mood immediately. "You're glowing today," she said, styling my hair into soft waves that looked sophisticated but approachable. "Something good must be happening in your life." "Something wonderful," I confirmed, watching her work magic with curling iron and styling spray. "I can't talk about it yet, but tonight is going to change everything." Sandra's knowing smile in the mirror made me feel like we were conspirators in some beautiful plot that would unfold in just a few hours. The phone interview confirmation from Jessica had been brief but reassuring. "We're moving forward with the hiring process," she'd said. "Pending your acceptance, we'd like you to start in 2 weeks. Does that timeline work for your situation?" 2 weeks felt perfect. Enough time to process this major life change, but soon enough to escape Margaret's influence before it could undermine my confidence further. I practiced my announcement during the drive to Romano's, speaking to my reflection in the rearview mirror at red lights. "I wanted to share some wonderful news with all of you," I'd say after the birthday celebration wound down. "I've been offered a position at Grand Plaza Hotel." The words felt foreign and exciting, like trying on clothes that were too expensive but fit perfectly. My anticipation grew as I parked outside the restaurant where I'd spent 3 years building skills that someone finally valued. Mr. Romano waved from behind the counter, probably wondering why I was arriving as a customer instead of an employee. Tonight, I'd be able to tell him about my career advancement while thanking him for the foundation he'd helped me build. The secret job offer had given me armor against Margaret's usual criticism throughout the week. When she'd commented on Tuesday about my dead-end situation, I'd simply smiled and said things were looking up. When she'd mentioned on Wednesday that David needed a wife who could contribute meaningfully to their social position, I'd agreed completely, knowing I was about to exceed her wildest expectations. Emma's social media posts about ambitious women throughout the week had bounced off me harmlessly. Her passive-aggressive comments about education and career advancement felt irrelevant when I knew I was about to leap ahead of her expectations entirely. Soon she'd see that I'd been ambitious all along. I just needed someone to recognize my potential. David's excitement about tonight had grown increasingly obvious. He checked his phone constantly, responding to family group texts with satisfied grins. When I'd asked about the birthday plans, he just smiled mysteriously and said I'd love what they had prepared. His secretive behavior felt loving and conspiratorial rather than threatening. The jewelry box in our bedroom held my job offer letter like a secret weapon waiting for deployment. Tonight, that folded document would transform me from Margaret's disappointing daughter-in-law into a professional success story that exceeded their demands. The woman who'd spent a year praying for my failure was about to witness my greatest triumph. Walking toward Romano's entrance for my birthday celebration, I felt lighter than I had since our wedding day. The secret knowledge of my future gave me confidence to face whatever family dynamics awaited inside. Margaret's decorated envelope might contain family paperwork, but my purse held the key to freedom, respect, and vindication of everything I'd endured while proving my worth to people who'd never deserved my efforts. The bell above Romano's entrance chimed as I pushed through the familiar glass door, my family following behind me into the warm, welcoming atmosphere I'd called my second home for 3 years. The evening light filtered through checkered curtains, casting golden shadows across tables where I'd served countless meals and built relationships with regular customers who'd become friends. "Jennifer." Mr. Romano's voice boomed across the dining room as he spotted our group. His weathered face broke into the genuine smile I'd grown to treasure during difficult months of family criticism. He hurried over, wiping his hands on his apron, clearly pleased to see me arriving as a customer rather than an employee. "This must be the birthday celebration you mentioned. Mr. Romano, I'd like you to meet my family," I said with pride that surprised even me. "This is my husband David, his mother Margaret, and his sister Emma." Mr. Romano shook hands warmly with each of them, his enthusiasm infectious as he welcomed them to his restaurant. I felt grateful that Margaret would finally see the respect and affection I'd earned in this place. Margaret's smile was polite but strained as she surveyed the modest dining room with critical eyes. The red vinyl booths, mismatched chairs, and handwritten specials board clearly didn't meet her usual standards. But she was here making an effort for my birthday, and that felt like progress worth celebrating. "We'll take good care of you tonight," Mr. Romano promised, leading us to the corner booth I'd suggested when David asked about seating preferences. The spot offered privacy for family conversation while giving me clear view of the kitchen where Maria worked her magic with traditional Italian recipes. Maria caught my eye from behind the service window and winked conspiratorially. She'd probably noticed my improved mood throughout the week and was happy to see my family finally celebrating with me at Romano's. Tony, busy setting up tables for the dinner rush, gave me a thumbs up and mouthed "Happy birthday," with his characteristic enthusiasm. Settling into the booth felt surreal. I'd served countless meals at this very table, but now I sat as a guest while different servers handled our order. Margaret examined the laminated menu with visible skepticism, her manicured fingers holding it like it might contaminate her hands. Emma scrolled through her phone, occasionally glancing up to exchange meaningful looks with David. "The chicken parmesan is excellent here," I suggested, trying to bridge the gap between my two worlds. "Mr. Romano's wife makes the sauce from her grandmother's recipe." Margaret nodded politely but ordered the most expensive item on the menu, lobster ravioli that cost $28 and wasn't even one of our signature dishes. David's behavior throughout dinner struck me as nervous excitement. He kept checking his phone under the table, responding to texts with quick thumbs while trying to maintain normal conversation. When I asked about work, his answers were distracted and brief. He seemed focused on something more important than our discussion about his latest accounting clients. "Are you expecting an important call?" I asked when his phone buzzed for the fourth time during our appetizer course. David glanced at Margaret before answering, receiving some kind of silent approval that I interpreted as family consideration for my birthday celebration. "Just coordinating some surprise elements for tonight," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Margaret's conversation throughout dinner felt artificial and rehearsed. She asked questions about my classes at community college with false interest, nodding along to my answers while clearly thinking about something else entirely. Her usual criticism was absent, replaced by an odd pleasantness that should have warned me but instead filled me with hope. "You've been working so hard to improve yourself," Margaret said as we waited for our main courses. "It's admirable how determined you've been despite all the challenges." Her words sounded supportive, but something in her tone made them feel like setup rather than genuine praise. Emma snorted quietly at her mother's comment, quickly covering it with a cough when I looked her way. The birthday cake appeared as we finished dinner, carried by Sandra, one of the newer servers who'd been trained during my recent shifts. She placed it carefully in front of me, smiling warmly as the entire restaurant began singing "Happy Birthday." Regular customers joined in from nearby tables, creating a chorus of genuine affection that made my heart swell with belonging. "Make a wish," David said, positioning his phone to capture the moment. I closed my eyes and wished for the courage to share my job offer news gracefully, hoping this announcement would finally bridge the gap between Margaret's expectations and my reality. The candles flickered as I blew them out, their smoke rising like incense carrying my hopes toward the ceiling. Margaret's applause was enthusiastic but hollow, her hands creating sharp clapping sounds that cut through the restaurant's ambient noise. She reached into her designer purse with theatrical ceremony, withdrawing the decorated envelope I'd seen her preparing days earlier. "We have a special gift for you," she announced, her voice carrying clearly across nearby tables. "From all of us," she continued, holding the envelope high enough for other diners to see. The pink paper with silver butterflies looked festive and innocent, exactly like something chosen for a beloved family member. Other customers turned to watch our celebration, probably thinking how lucky I was to have family who cared enough to make public gestures of affection. Emma's phone appeared in her hands, also positioned to record whatever was about to unfold. David adjusted his angle to capture my face more clearly, his excitement palpable as he focused the camera on my expression. Their coordination was perfect, suggesting they'd rehearsed this moment or at least discussed the timing carefully. "Open it," Margaret urged, her eyes bright with anticipation that I mistook for grandmotherly joy. The envelope felt heavier than expected as I turned it over in my hands, running my fingers along the decorative edges. Everyone at our table leaned forward slightly, watching my reaction with intense focus that made this moment feel monumentally important. The paper tore easily under my fingernails, revealing official documents folded neatly inside. Legal letterhead caught my eye first, followed by formal language that took my brain several seconds to process. "Petition for dissolution of marriage" sat at the top of the first page in bold, imposing letters that seemed to grow larger as I stared at them. My breath caught in my throat as the words registered. "Divorce papers. On my birthday." in front of my coworkers and regular customers. The decorated envelope that had looked so innocent was actually a weapon designed for maximum destruction of my dignity and sense of belonging. The restaurant continued buzzing with normal dinner conversation around us, but our corner booth existed in a bubble of tension so thick I could barely breathe. Margaret's satisfied expression confirmed that this wasn't a mistake or misunderstanding. This was exactly what she'd planned when I'd caught her at our kitchen table preparing legal documents. David's phone remained steady in his hands, still recording my reaction for posterity. They wanted to capture this moment of devastation, probably to watch it again later and share it with family members who couldn't attend tonight's performance. My humiliation was their entertainment, carefully orchestrated and professionally documented. The papers felt heavy in my trembling hands as I looked up at three faces watching me with eager anticipation. Margaret's smile was triumphant, Emma's expression was gleeful, and David looked nervous but excited about whatever reaction they expected from me. They turned my birthday into their victory celebration, using my own workplace as the stage for my public destruction. Time seemed to slow as I stared at those divorce papers, my mind processing the magnitude of what they'd planned. The decorated envelope with its innocent butterflies had delivered the cruelest blow imaginable, but instead of the devastation they expected, I felt something entirely different washing over me. Clarity. Pure, crystalline clarity about who these people really were and what this moment actually meant. Margaret's smile was radiant with satisfaction as she watched me absorb the contents of her gift. Her eyes sparkled with the joy of someone who'd successfully executed a plan months in the making. Emma leaned forward slightly, phone still recording, hungry for the breakdown they'd orchestrated. David's camera remained focused on my face, waiting to capture tears that would never come. The restaurant's ambient noise faded into background whispers as nearby diners sensed drama unfolding at our corner booth. Mrs. Patterson, my regular Tuesday customer, turned in her chair to get a better view. The young couple at table 12 stopped their conversation mid-sentence, drawn by the tension radiating from our family gathering. I looked down at the legal documents again, noting the careful preparation that had gone into this moment. Someone had hired an attorney, filed paperwork, and coordinated timing to maximize my humiliation. The divorce petition was thorough and complete, requiring only my signature to dissolve our marriage permanently. They'd even brought a pen, anticipating my compliance with their plan. Well, Margaret prompted when my silence stretched longer than she'd expected. Aren't you going to say something? Her voice carried across the quiet restaurant, inviting everyone to witness my reaction to their birthday surprise. The expectation in her tone was clear. I was supposed to beg, cry, or create the scene they'd come here to witness. Instead, I reached for the pen they'd provided and signed my name with handwriting steadier than it had been in months. The ink flowed smoothly across the signature line, marking the end of a marriage but also the beginning of something they couldn't imagine. Margaret's triumphant expression faltered slightly as I calmly folded the papers and returned them to their decorative envelope. David's phone wavered in his hands as confusion replaced anticipation. "That's it?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "You're not going to fight this or ask questions?" His disappointment was palpable. Clearly, my calm acceptance wasn't providing the entertainment value they'd anticipated for their recording session. "Thank you," I said, standing up from the booth with dignity intact. "This is actually the most generous gift you could have given me." Margaret's face shifted from satisfaction to bewilderment as I reached into my purse and withdrew my own envelope. The official job offer letter from Grand Plaza Hotel that would rewrite their entire narrative about my worth. "I have some news to share as well," I announced, my voice carrying clearly through the hushed restaurant. 3 days ago, I was offered a position as guest services coordinator at Grand Plaza Hotel. The salary is $45,000 annually with full benefits and housing included. The words felt powerful leaving my lips, each one landing with precision in the silence that followed. Margaret's mouth opened slightly but no sound emerged. Emma's phone slipped in her grasp before she recovered and continued recording, though her expression had shifted from gleeful anticipation to stunned disbelief. David's camera captured his own shocked face in the black screen as he forgot to keep filming my reaction. "The position starts in 2 weeks," I continued, enjoying the weight of their attention for reasons completely different from what they'd planned. "It's in another city about 3 hours from here. A fresh start with people who value restaurant experience and customer service skills. Each detail was a small victory over their months of criticism and dismissal. The restaurant erupted as my words sank in. Mr. Romano's voice boomed across the dining room. "Jennifer, that's wonderful news." Maria's face appeared in the kitchen window, her smile broad with genuine pride. "You deserve this," she called out, her accent thick with emotion. Tony dropped his cleaning cloth and started clapping, his enthusiasm infectious as other staff members joined in. The sound of applause filled Romano's as my co-workers celebrated news that transformed their colleagues' humiliation into triumph. Regular customers who'd watched me work through difficult months stood up from their tables, adding their voices to the celebration. Mrs. Patterson, who'd witnessed my declining mood over recent weeks, raised her water glass in toast. "To Jennifer and her bright future," she declared, prompting other diners to join her impromptu celebration. The restaurant became a community rallying around someone they'd watched struggle, their genuine joy drowning out the family who'd tried to destroy me. Margaret's face cycled through emotions I'd never seen before. Confusion gave way to disbelief, then something that looked disturbingly like fear. She'd expected to deliver a devastating blow to a vulnerable woman, not hand freedom to someone who'd already secured her independence. Her carefully planned moment of triumph was collapsing into public embarrassment. "You knew about this job when you signed those papers?" David asked, his voice strained with the realization that I'd outmaneuvered them completely. His phone hung forgotten in his lap as he processed that his wife had just accepted divorce while holding a career opportunity that exceeded every criticism his family had leveled against me. "I received the offer 3 days ago," I confirmed, watching his face pale as the timeline clicked into place. "The same day you all started acting mysteriously excited about my birthday celebration." Emma's phone captured David's growing understanding that their surprise had backfired spectacularly. The irony was perfect and devastating. Margaret had handed me divorce papers expecting to break me, but she'd actually freed me to pursue the professional respect she'd always claimed I couldn't achieve. Their cruelty had eliminated the only obstacle preventing me from accepting an opportunity that would prove every negative thing they'd said about my potential was wrong. "The training program includes management development," I added, pulling the official letterhead from my purse to show them. "They specifically recruited me because of my restaurant background. Apparently, my experience here at Romano's demonstrates exactly the skills they value for advancement in hospitality management." Mr. Romano appeared beside our table, his face glowing with pride as he looked at the job offer. "Jennifer is one of our finest employees," he told Margaret directly. "Smart, dedicated, and respected by everyone here. This hotel is lucky to have her." His words carried the weight of 3 years watching me work with integrity and skill. Margaret's silence was deafening. The woman who'd spent 2 years lecturing me about professional inadequacy now sat speechless as my co-workers celebrated an achievement that invalidated every criticism she'd made. Her decorated envelope had delivered my freedom instead of my destruction. Emma lowered her phone slowly, finally understanding that their perfectly planned ambush had become my moment of vindication. The video they'd intended to share as entertainment would now document their own failure to recognize worth that others had discovered and valued. David stared at the job offer letter like it was written in a foreign language. 2 years of supporting his mother's criticism had just cost him a wife who was walking away with professional success, financial independence, and the moral high ground he'd helped them steal from me. The silence that followed my job announcement stretched across Romano's dining room like a held breath. I stood beside our corner booth, divorce papers in one hand and my future in the other, watching Margaret's face cycle through emotions she'd never shown before. The woman who'd orchestrated this public execution now sat speechless, her satisfied smile frozen into something resembling panic. David's phone remained motionless in his hands, its black screen reflecting his stunned expression. The video he'd been so eager to capture had become evidence of his own miscalculation rather than my humiliation. His finger hovered over the record button, uncertain whether to continue documenting a moment that was spiraling beyond their control. "You planned this," Margaret finally whispered, her voice barely audible above the restaurant's ambient noise. "You knew about the divorce papers." Her accusation carried no conviction because she was beginning to understand that my calm reaction wasn't planned. It was genuine relief disguised as composure. "I planned nothing," I replied, my voice steady and clear enough for nearby tables to hear. You handed me freedom I didn't even know I wanted. 3 days ago, while you were preparing those papers, I received validation that everything you've said about my limitations was wrong. The timing was perfect, almost supernatural in its irony. Emma's phone captured her mother's growing realization that their surprise had backfired completely. Margaret had expected tears, pleas for forgiveness, or desperate attempts to salvage our marriage. Instead, she'd handed liberation to someone who was already planning to leave their toxic judgment behind forever. $45,000, I repeated, letting the number sink into their consciousness. Plus benefits, housing, and career advancement opportunities. The management training program starts with my employment. Each detail was a small explosion in their narrative about my professional inadequacy. Mr. Romano reached our table, his weathered hands clasping mine with fatherly pride. "Jennifer, this is incredible news," he said loudly enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "Grand Plaza Hotel is getting someone special. We're going to miss you terribly, but this opportunity is exactly what you deserve." His words carried the weight of 3 years watching me handle difficult customers, work double shifts without complaint, and maintain grace under pressure that would have broken less determined people. Mr. Romano's public endorsement validated my character in front of witnesses who'd just observed Margaret's cruelty. Maria emerged from the kitchen, flowers still dusting her apron from preparing evening specials. "You're going to be amazing," she called out, her accent thick with emotion. "Show them what Romano's girls can do when given real chances." Her pride felt maternal and protective, the opposite of Margaret's toxic influence. Tony appeared beside Maria, his young face beaming with excitement. "This is the best birthday surprise ever," he declared, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You're going to run that whole hotel someday." His enthusiasm was infectious, spreading through the restaurant staff like wildfire. Regular customers began approaching our table, drawn by the celebration and curious about the dramatic shift in atmosphere. Mrs. Chin, who always requested my section on Friday nights, squeezed my shoulder gently. "Good for you, honey. You always seem too smart for—" She paused, glancing at Margaret, "for staying in one place forever." The contrast between my supporters and David's family became stark and undeniable. Romano's staff and customers surrounded me with genuine affection and pride, celebrating someone they'd watched struggle with dignity and persistence. Meanwhile, Margaret, David, and Emma remained frozen at their table, processing how their moment of triumph had transformed into public embarrassment. "When do you start?" Mr. Romano asked, his question drawing more staff members into our growing circle of celebration. The kitchen crew had abandoned their prep work to witness this unexpected turn of events, their faces bright with happiness for someone they genuinely cared about. 2 weeks, I answered, watching Margaret's face pale further at the timeline. She was beginning to understand that I'd been planning my escape while she was planning my destruction. The divorce papers she'd prepared as my ending were actually clearing the path for my new beginning. David finally found his voice, though it came out strained and uncertain. "You're really leaving? Just like that?" His question revealed how little he understood about the damage his family had inflicted or how thoroughly they'd destroyed my desire to remain in their world. "I'm really free," I corrected, emphasizing the word that captured what this moment truly meant. "Free to work where I'm valued, live where I'm respected, and build relationships with people who celebrate my success instead of planning my failure." My words were measured and calm, but they cut through the restaurant's noise with surgical precision. Margaret attempted to regain control of the situation, her voice rising slightly. "This is all very sudden, dear. Perhaps you should think carefully before making such drastic decisions." The endearment sounded hollow and desperate, coming from someone who just handed me divorce papers as a birthday gift. "I've been thinking for 2 years, I replied, meeting her gaze directly. Every criticism, every comparison to David's ex-girlfriend, every suggestion that I wasn't good enough for this family, all of it led me to this moment. You were right about one thing, Margaret. I do deserve better." The restaurant's applause grew louder as my words reached tables throughout the dining room. Other diners had pieced together enough of the situation to understand that they were witnessing someone's liberation from family cruelty. Their support felt genuine and spontaneous, the opposite of the calculated performance Margaret had orchestrated. "The beautiful thing about timing," I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word, is that your gift of divorce papers arrived exactly when I was ready to accept freedom. I don't have to choose between my marriage and my self-respect anymore. You've made that decision beautifully simple." Emma's recording captured her own family's growing discomfort as they realized their roles had reversed completely. They'd come to Romanos as executioners but found themselves defendants in a trial of public opinion. The witnesses they'd invited to my humiliation were now judging their character instead. Margaret's purse sat open beside her, the decorative envelope that had delivered divorce papers looking ridiculous and childish among the legal documents. Her weapon of choice had become evidence of her own cruelty, preserved forever in video recordings that would tell a very different story than she'd intended. The weight of 2 years' worth of criticism and conditional acceptance lifted from my shoulders as I prepared to leave Romanos for the final time as their victim. Every snide comment, every comparison to other women, every suggestion that I wasn't worthy of their son, all of it evaporated in the face of professional validation and genuine community support. David's attempt to process what had just happened played out across his features like a slow-motion revelation. His mother's birthday gift had just cost him a wife who was walking away with dignity, success, and freedom he'd helped them take from me. The recording in his hands would forever document his family's cruelty and his own complicity in orchestrating my public humiliation. Margaret sat motionless, her satisfied smile completely erased by the realization that her perfectly planned revenge had become my perfect escape. The decorated envelope beside her purse looked pathetic and impotent, its innocent butterflies mocking the darkness of its intended purpose. I walked out of Romano's restaurant that night carrying nothing but my purse and my dignity, leaving behind a family that had just revealed their true nature to an entire room of witnesses. The cool evening air felt cleaner than it had in months, and each step toward my car marked another moment of distance from people who'd never deserved my efforts to earn their approval. The drive home was silent except for the sound of my phone buzzing with messages I didn't read. David, Margaret, and Emma were probably coordinating damage control, trying to process how their perfectly planned ambush had become my moment of triumph. Their desperate attempts to reach me felt powerless now that I held the key to my own future. 2 weeks later, I stood in the marble lobby of Grand Plaza Hotel, wearing a professional uniform that actually felt like armor instead of costume. The nameplate on my chest read, Jennifer Walsh, Guest Services Coordinator, in elegant script that made me smile every time I caught my reflection in the lobby's mirrors. My maiden name had returned along with my self-respect. The employee residential building became my sanctuary in ways I'd never imagined possible. My furnished apartment was small but beautifully designed, with large windows overlooking the city skyline and a balcony where I could drink morning coffee in peaceful silence. No one criticized my choices, questioned my worth, or made me feel like an unwelcome guest in my own home. Jessica Martinez became more than my supervisor. She became a mentor who saw leadership potential that Margaret had spent 2 years trying to convince me didn't exist. During my first month, Jessica assigned me to handle VIP guest relations, trusting my Romanos experience to manage demanding clients with grace and professionalism. Your restaurant background gives you instincts other coordinators have to learn through training, Jessica explained during my 30-day review. You read people naturally, anticipate needs before they're expressed, and handle pressure without losing your composure. Those skills are exactly what luxury hospitality requires. The management training program opened doors I'd never imagined walking through. Corporate communication seminars taught me business language that made my community college courses feel like elementary preparation. Leadership workshops revealed strengths I'd possessed all along but had been taught to doubt under Margaret's constant criticism. My first promotion to Assistant Guest Services Manager came 4 months after starting, accompanied by a salary increase that pushed my annual income above $50,000. The raise meant I could afford luxuries I'd only dreamed about during my struggling years: quality clothes, regular salon appointments, and savings accounts that actually grew instead of shrinking under financial pressure. Word of my success began filtering back through mutual acquaintances in ways that felt like cosmic justice. Linda, Margaret's country club friend, happened to stay at Grand Plaza Hotel during a business trip. She recognized my name on the staff directory and specifically requested my assistance with her corporate event arrangements. "You're David's ex-wife, aren't you?" Linda asked during our consultation meeting. "Margaret mentioned you worked in hospitality, but she never said you were management at such a prestigious hotel." Her surprise was genuine and telling. Margaret had obviously downplayed my achievements to maintain her narrative about my inadequacy. Linda's glowing review of my professional service reached Margaret through their social network within days. The woman who dismissed me as a mere waitress had to hear detailed praise of my competence from her own friends. My success was becoming impossible for Margaret to minimize or explain away through her usual dismissive tactics. David's attempts to reconnect began arriving through social media messages I never answered. His texts grew increasingly desperate as he realized what he'd lost. But Margaret's lessons about recognizing value only after destruction had taught me not to trust people who celebrated my perceived failures. His regret felt hollow compared to the genuine respect I'd found in my new environment. The divorce settlement proceedings worked entirely in my favor thanks to their own documentation. David's video recording of the birthday ambush became evidence of planned emotional cruelty that his attorney couldn't explain away. No judge would award alimony or shared assets to someone who'd orchestrated public humiliation for entertainment purposes. Margaret's legal strategy backfired as completely as her birthday surprise. The decorated envelope she'd prepared so carefully became Exhibit A in proceedings that painted her as the architect of family dysfunction. Her own attention to detail, the timing, the location, the coordination, proved premeditation that protected me from financial obligations to people who'd treated me as disposable. 6 months after that night at Romano's, I was promoted again to guest services manager, supervising a team of 12 coordinators across 3 departments. The position came with a company car, expense account, and salary approaching $60,000 annually. Every milestone validated Jessica's initial assessment of my potential and contradicted Margaret's predictions about my limitations. The hotel's annual employee recognition ceremony became my moment of ultimate vindication. Standing on stage accepting an award for exceptional customer satisfaction scores, I thought about Margaret's phone conversation where she'd prayed for David to come to his senses about our marriage. Her prayers had been answered in ways she never intended. My acceptance speech was brief but meaningful, thanking my team and acknowledging the restaurant experience that had prepared me for hospitality excellence. The audience of hotel executives and community business leaders applauded someone Margaret had dismissed as unworthy of professional consideration. Their respect felt earned rather than demanded, genuine rather than conditional. Emma's social media posts about ambitious women had stopped entirely after my promotion announcements began appearing in local business publications. The passive-aggressive commentary about education and career advancement felt ridiculous when directed at someone who was achieving measurable success through determination and skill rather than inherited privilege. David's LinkedIn connection request arrived the same week as my manager promotion, suggesting he was tracking my professional advancement through mutual business contacts. His attempt to reconnect professionally felt pathetic and transparent. The man who'd recorded my expected humiliation now wanted association with my actual success. The greatest satisfaction came from living well without needing their approval or acknowledgement. My happiness was complete and self-contained, built on genuine achievements and authentic relationships rather than desperate attempts to earn acceptance from people incapable of recognizing worth. Margaret's judgment had become irrelevant to my life satisfaction. My new colleagues respected my opinions, valued my contributions, and trusted my leadership abilities. The professional environment Margaret claimed I could never access had welcomed me warmly and rewarded my efforts with advancement opportunities. Every day at Grand Plaza Hotel confirmed that her assessment of my potential had been completely wrong. The ultimate revenge wasn't causing them pain. It was proving their cruelty had been based on jealousy and insecurity rather than accurate evaluation of my character or capabilities. Margaret's need to diminish me had revealed more about her limitations than mine. Her birthday gift of divorce papers had freed me to discover success that existed far beyond her narrow vision of acceptable achievement. Standing in my corner office 18 months after that night at Romano's, I looked out at the city skyline and felt grateful for every criticism that had pushed me toward independence. Margaret's decorated envelope had contained the greatest gift possible: liberation from people who'd never deserved the effort I'd spent trying to earn their love. If this story of ultimate vindication had you cheering out loud, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when she calmly signed those divorce papers and pulled out her job offer letter. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more incredible revenge stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.